بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So our lecture this evening is on the topic of the ways and means of acquiring knowledge. The ways and means of acquiring ilm, knowledge. And this is taken from a book which is based upon a lecture titled Al-Ilmu Wasailuhu wa Thimaruhu by Sheikh Sulaiman bin Salimullah Al-Ruhaili. And this is a beautiful book, a very inspiring book. And so I wanted to share and remind some benefits, to remind myself first and foremost, and to share these benefits with you so that we can understand the great position that ilm, knowledge, has in the religion of Islam. The Shaykh begins, after praising Allah Azza wa Jal and sending salat and salam upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by mentioning that Allah Azza wa Jal, He sent our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a bashir. A bashir is one who brings good news, glad tidings, and likewise as a nadhir. A nadhir is one who warns. So we sent him as a bashir and a nadhir. As Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran, وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. That Allah Azza wa Jal sent him as a caller to Allah by His permission and as a illuminating lamp. An illuminating lamp. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He sent him with the truth, haqq, the truth, and with the completed, perfected religion. As Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, that Allah may make it uppermost over all other religion, even if the pagans may detest it. And He made Muhammad likewise as the seal of the prophets. So He sent him as a bashir and a nadhir, and one who calls to the truth with the true, perfect, complete religion, that He may make it uppermost. And He made him also the seal of the prophets. So He is the seal of the prophets on top of all of that. And so the Messenger of Allah he performed his duty, he fulfilled the trust, he conveyed the message. He did not leave anything of goodness which his ummah needs to become closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, except that he conveyed it and explained it. And nor did he leave any evil, except that he warned from it, that he mentioned it, and that he warned from it. For that reason, what the Messenger of Allah left us upon is al-bayda, which is absolute clarity. The night is as clear and distinct as the day is clear and distinct from each other. And so, upon this, anyone who swerves and deviates from this path alongside its clarity and apparentness, then he is someone who is perished. He will perish. Now, once we understand this, the question arises, what is it that the Messenger of Allah, what did he leave? What was the inheritance that he left? Did he leave dinars? Did he leave dirhams? Did he leave properties? Did he leave clothing? What did he leave? And the answer to this question is that the Messenger of Allah, he did not leave a dinar, a dirham, which is spent and expires, nor did he leave any clothing like a thobe, which wears out and perishes. Rather, what he left, meaning what did he leave for his ummah? He didn't leave wealth and possessions and properties and dinars and dirhams for his ummah. What did he leave for his ummah? What did he leave? Rather, he left an inheritance which is great and mighty and which remains and persists. And this inheritance is something which every person, if he wants a portion of this inheritance, he can acquire this inheritance. As with normal inheritance, where you have to be a relative, you have to be a blood relative, and where some relatives, they prevent other relatives from taking part of the inheritance if they are present, unlike this type of inheritance, which is only available to blood relatives, this inheritance of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is available for every single person who takes the ways and means to adopt it. So I and you and every person, we can take from this inheritance of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this means that the Messenger of Allah, he left ilm, he left knowledge, he made knowledge to be inherited. And this is because the deen of Islam, our religion Islam, which is the deen of every single messenger, is based upon ilm, it is based upon knowledge. It is not based upon blind following, it is based upon ilm and basira, insight and understanding, fiqh and amal and action. This is the essence of our religion. It is unlike what we see with the Nasara, for example, the Christians, or with the Yahud, or with other than them, where we do not see that they have, that the average person proceeds upon ilm. This is not what they have, because they strayed from the ilm that was brought by Isa alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam and other than them from the prophets and messengers. So the deen of Islam is a deen of ilm and basira and fiqh and amal. It is not a religion just of worship, just making ibadah without any ilm, without any understanding. So it is a religion of ilm. And to worship and to act without knowledge is the way of those who are astray. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Fatiha. Every day we recite this surah. غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Two types of people which are mentioned. Those who act without knowledge, those who worship Allah without ilm. And this is represented strongly in the Christians, in that they worship Allah blindly upon ignorance, and so therefore they are misguided. And nor is Islam a religion of where a person, he refrains from acting. So he has the ilm and he refrains from acting, because this is the way of those upon whom is Allah's anger. And this is represented amongst the Yahud. They have this trait amongst the Yahud, in that they have the ilm, they know the truth, and they refuse to abide by the truth. So the path of Islam is a path which is built upon ilm, and it is founded upon knowledge and understanding, and to act upon that knowledge. So once this is clear now, that Allah Azza wa Jal perfected Islam by way of the Messenger, sent him the complete religion, and he fulfilled his trust, what did he leave behind? He left inheritance, which is ilm. This ilm does not perish, it does not expire, it like clothing and wealth, rather it is something that is mighty and great. Then we see in the Sharia of Islam many texts in the Quran and the Sunnah which explain the greatness of this ilm, the greatness of this knowledge and its virtues. So we shall mention just some of the texts that are mentioned here by the Shaykh. From them is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ, that indeed only those from the servants of Allah fear Him, those who have ilm, those who have knowledge. So those who fear Allah as He truly should be feared are the ones who have ilm, they are the ulama. And their fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, their khawf, their khashya, is one which is complete. And it follows on from their ilm, their knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal, because their knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal is likewise, it is plentiful. And, it is plentiful. So therefore it follows that their khashya and their khawf of Allah Azza wa Jal would follow on from that. Likewise, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will raise those amongst you who have been given, those who believe amongst you, and those who have been given knowledge in ranks, in degrees. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He bestows upon a servant Iman, faith. And then on top of this faith, He then bestows upon him knowledge. And with this knowledge, and what follows on from that knowledge, He will raise him in degrees and ranks, because this ilm is something that leads him to benefit from this ilm in terms of his action. So Allah increases him rank upon rank, level upon level. And as for the person who has just knowledge in and of itself without Iman, without any faith, then this knowledge will be of no benefit to him. And it will not raise him. Rather, it will simply lower him and humiliate him. Likewise, from the texts which explain the greatness of this ilm is the question in which Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, قُل, say to the messenger, say, O messenger, say to them, قُل هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are those equal, those who know and those who do not know? This is a rhetorical question by which rejection is intended. It is to say that how can those be equal, those who know and those who do not know? How can they be equal? With which intellect can they be treated the same? And so this also indicates the greatness of the position and the status of the ulama, the scholars. From the Sunnah, we see there are great and mighty statements from the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam which explain the greatness of this ilm. From them is the well-known hadith from Sahih Muslim, وَمَنْ سَلَقَ طَرِيقًا يَلْتَمِسُ بِهِ عِلْمًا سَحَّلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Whoever sets out on a path in order to pursue knowledge, Allah will make easy for him by way of that a path to paradise. وَمَا اجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ ويتدارسونه بينهم إلا خفتهم الملائكة ونزلت عليهم السكينة وغشيتهم الرحمة وذكرهم الله في من عنده. And nor do any people gather in a house from the houses of Allah. They recite the book of Allah. They study it between them, except that the angels lower their wings, surround them. And tranquility descends upon them. And mercy envelopes them, and Allah mentions them to those who are with Him. And likewise, in a similar hadith, at the end of which the Messenger of Allah, he said, in fact, we'll read the whole hadith, مَنْ سَلَقَ طَرِيقًا يَلْتَمِسُ فِيهِ عِلْمًا سَحَّلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Whoever sets out on a path to knowledge, Allah will make easy for him a path to paradise. وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ, and indeed the angels, لَتَدَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا, they place their wings, or they lower their wings of humility, out of pleasure, out of being pleased with the student of knowledge. وَإِنَّ طَالِبَ الْعِلْمِ يَسْتَغْفِرُ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And indeed the one who pursues and seeks knowledge, everything which is in the heavens and earth seeks forgiveness for him. حَتَّى الْحِيتَانُ فِي الْمَاءِ, until even the fish in the water, in the sea, seeks forgiveness for the seeker of knowledge. وَإِنَّ فَضْلَ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ عَلَى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. And indeed the excellence of the scholar over the worshipper is like the excellence of the moon over all of the stars. إِنَّ الْعُلَمَاءِ وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Indeed, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. And indeed, إِنَّ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ لَمْ يُوَرِّثُوا دِينَارًا وَلَا دِرْهَمًا إِنَّمَا وَرَّثُوا الْعِلْمِ فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. And indeed, the prophets did not leave dinar or dirham as an inheritance. Rather, they left ilm, knowledge. So whoever takes from it has taken a great portion. And so the Shaykh, he comments upon this mighty hadith piece by piece. So we'll mention some of the points that were mentioned in order to benefit fully from this hadith. Man salaqa tariqan, whoever sets out on a path, meaning whoever left his house, whoever walked out from his house, whoever left his family, whoever left the ease with which he was in his house, and he left his house. And he went out in order to seek what? What was he seeking? يَلْتَمِسُ فِيهِ عِلْمًا. يَلْتَمِسُ فِيهِ عِلْمًا. This is a proof. يَلْتَمِسُ meaning he goes out in order to pursue and to seek and to acquire. This in itself is evidence that knowledge is acquired by taking the ways and the means. Knowledge doesn't come to you. Doesn't fall on your lap. Doesn't fall on your table. It doesn't accidentally fall into your ears. Knowledge comes, you go out and you pursue the ilm. And therefore it means that there are asbab, there are ways and means by which this knowledge is acquired. And we shall mention these inshallah ta'ala. And then, after this, he said, سَحَّلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. So whoever left his house, went going out in order to pursue knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal will make easy for him the path to paradise. How will Allah make easy the path to paradise? What is the meaning of this statement? The scholars have two explanations. There are two explanations. The first explanation is that knowledge itself, ilm itself, is from the path to paradise. Knowledge in and of itself, ilm itself. So therefore, just by going out to pursue knowledge, you are actually on the path to paradise itself. This is because ilm itself is from the path to paradise. And so therefore, whoever left his house, left his family, went out in order to acquire some knowledge, and he took the ways and means, he is engaged in a path that leads to paradise. The second explanation is as follows, which is that whoever goes out in order to seek knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal will then make easy for him to perform worship on account of that knowledge. And he will make it easy for him, and so therefore the ibadah which he performs on account of that will lead him to paradise, will put him on a path to paradise. And then he said in the hadith, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَدَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ رِضًا بِمَا يَصْنَعُ. The angels are those who are created by Allah to obey Him. They never disobey Him. They only ever obey Him. As Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ مَا أَمَرَهُمْ وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They do not disobey Allah, but they do what they are commanded. They do not love except obedience to Allah. This is what the angels love. And so when they see a student of knowledge pursuing ilm, then they lower their wings out of humility for him. Not because this person is wise and intelligent and has nobility in his lineage, or he has a great deal of wealth, or because of his appearance. What is the reason that the angels are showing humility in front of this talibu ilm? It is because they are pleased with what he is doing. They are pleased with the person who leaves his house in order to pursue knowledge, because they know, the angels know, the status of ilm, of knowledge with Allah Azza wa Jal. Knowledge of what He revealed. And so therefore, because they know that this student is leaving his house for that reason, the seeker of knowledge, they humble themselves in front of this talibu ilm, because they are pleased with what he is doing. And all of this shows to us the mighty position and status that even the angels show humility and are pleased with the action of the seeker of knowledge. And then وَإِنَّ الْعَالِمِ لَيَسْتَغْفِرُ لَهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. That everything in the heavens and earth seeks forgiveness for the alim. Even Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions the seeker of knowledge in front of those who are with him in the highest company. حَتَّى الْحِيتَانُ فِي الْمَاءِ. Even the fish in the sky, even the animals on the land. Even the fish in the sea and the animals on the land, and even the birds in the sky. All of them, they seek forgiveness for the alim. وَفَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرِ عَلَى سَائِرِ الْكَوَاكِبِ. This is the comparison between the scholar, the one with knowledge, the one who proceeds in his religion with knowledge, and between the average worshipper, the one who spends his time worshipping, is like the excellence of the moon, the full moon, the brightness of the full moon that you see, compared to all the other stars in the sky. There is no comparison. There is no comparison. And, every person, when he looks in the sky, he sees the moon, he sees it is the best and the most brightest of all of the bodies in the sky. This is the same with the alim. When you have an alim, when you hear of a worshipper, he worships day and night. And you hear of an alim, there's no comparison. The alim is one whose illumination is much greater, because it illuminates, the moon illuminates the sky. You can see on account of the moon, but you can't see on account of a single star. There's not enough light to illuminate you. But the moon is enough to illuminate the whole area around you and gives you light. This is the example of the alim because of the fruits of knowledge that the scholar brings. As for the worshipper, his benefit is only for himself. His light is only for himself. It is not for everybody else. So therefore, the star does not illuminate the whole sky. But the moon illuminates the whole sky and illuminates the whole area around you. This is the excellence of the alim over the worshipper. Likewise, he then said at the end, وَإِنَّ الْعُلَمَاء وَرَثَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ. Indeed, the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. The closest of all people to the Prophet ﷺ are the scholars. When a person dies, he leaves his wealth, he leaves his belongings, he leaves his properties, he leaves his cars, he leaves everything. And, as we said before, that the relatives come, and so some may prevent others from the inheritance because they are close in relation. This is how it is with the inheritance of the world. But when the prophets die, the scholars are the ones who inherit from them, the ilm. And they are the closest of all people to the prophets. As it is said, أهل الحديث هم آل الرسول وإن لم يصحبوا نفسه أنفاسه صحبوا. Which means, the people of hadith, the ones who took the hadith from the Messenger of Allah, they are the family of the Messenger. Even if they did not accompany himself as a person. Rather, anfasahu sahibu, meaning that his expressions and his utterances which he made, they are companions with his utterances. So when they preserve the hadith, they write the hadith, they memorize the hadith, and they recite them and teach them, they are with the expressions and the statements of the Messenger of Allah. They are with him in that sense. And this is the inheritance they have taken from him. And وَإِنَّ الْأَنْبِيَاءَ لَمْ يُوَرِّثُوا دِينَارًا وَلَا دِرْهَمًا. The prophets did not leave dinars or dirhams, because these are things which perish, they end, but rather they left ilm. So anyone who takes from this ilm, he has taken a portion of the inheritance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a great and mighty hadith. And likewise from the ahadith, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. To whomsoever Allah intends to show goodness, then He will grant him understanding of the religion. Understanding of the religion. And this is a measure that every person can take for himself. Because as the scholars explain, there is the reverse understanding of this hadith, which is that if Allah does not intend to show goodness to a person, He will not give him understanding of the religion. So this now becomes a measure. You know if Allah is intending good for you or not. If you know about yourself that you are increasing in your fiqh of the religion, that you are increasing in your knowledge and understanding of the religion, of the kalima la ilaha illallah, of tawheed, of belief in Allah's names and attributes, of belief in the unseen, and then you are increasing in your fiqh of the rulings and the legislations which are due upon you, of purification, of prayer, of fasting, of hajj, of zakah and sadaqah and so on and so forth, and you are gaining fiqh in your religion, and you are proceeding every day, every month, every year, you can see that you are gaining basira and insight, then you know Allah Azza wa Jal is intending good for you. But if you cannot see that, if you do not see that you are gaining insight and gaining understanding as the days progress, and you are remaining the same or that you are lagging behind, then you know that Allah Azza wa Jal is not intending good for you. And likewise, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَضْلُ الْعِلْمِ خَيْرٌ مِّن فَضْلِ الْعِبَادَةِ, which means that the knowledge which is pursued, which is superfluous, is better than the ibadah, which is which is extra. Meaning, so the scholars explain this, the hadith, to mean that the knowledge which is sought, which is from the nawafil, so to speak, that if you pursue that knowledge, that is better than you make worship which is nafil. In other words, which is better, to perform ibadah, to pray 2 rak'ahs, to do actions which are voluntary, which are not obligatory, and to do them out of obedience to Allah? Is that better? Or is it better to pursue a knowledge which itself is not from the obligatory knowledge, rather it is from the non-obligatory knowledge? That is superior than performing the non-obligatory act of worship. And that's why the scholars are quoted as saying that if a student of knowledge was, had in front of him seeking knowledge which is not obligatory, or performing an act of ibadah which is not obligatory, then he is to give knowledge precedence. Because knowledge, even if it's not from the obligatory knowledge, is more superior than the voluntary acts of worship. Because of this hadith is the proof. فَضْلُ الْعِلْمِ خَيْرٌ مِّن فَضْلِ الْعِبَادَةِ. Shaykh Albani, he declared this to be sahih in at-targhib wa at-tarhib, sahih li ghayrihi. And likewise, 2 great and mighty ahadith. Just hearing these ahadith in itself would be sufficient for this lesson. The Prophet ﷺ, he explained that seeking knowledge is in the mosques. Seeking knowledge in the mosques is from the greatest and mightiest acts of worship. It is from the ra's of ibadat. And this is alongside our knowledge that the peak of Islam, we know from the hadith that the peak of Islam is to make jihad in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. And when we speak of jihad, obviously everybody understands that we are speaking of the jihad, which is the legislated jihad, not the jihad of the brethren of the devil, the shayateen, the khawarij, the extremists, the terrorists. This is not jihad what they are doing. What they are doing is fasad, corruption and evil. So with our knowledge that we are speaking of the correct understanding of jihad in Islam. So we know that in Islam, the peak of Islam is to make jihad in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. And alongside that, the Messenger of Allah Sallam, he said in this hadith, which is reported by Ibn Majah and declared sahih by Shaykh Albani upon the condition of Muslim. He said, "Man jaa masjidi hadha lam ya'tihi illa li khayrin yata'allamuhu aw yu'allimuhu fahuwa bimanzilati al-mujahid fi sabilillah." That anyone who came to this mosque of mine, so the scholars explain this is unique to the Prophet's mosque. This hadith is unique to the Prophet's mosque. Whoever came to this masjid of mine, he did not come to this mosque except for goodness in order to learn it or to teach it. He is at the level, he is of the status of the mujahid in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the virtue and the excellence and the status of the one who seeks knowledge or who teaches knowledge. But this, as the scholar said, is only for the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there is more. And this now is the second hadith. And as for the rest of the mosques, then anyone who seeks knowledge in the rest of the masajid, then what is for him? Listen to this hadith. And this hadith is reported by Al-Hakim and Al-Tabarani and declared to be Sahih, Hasan Sahih, in At-Targhib wa Tarhib. The Messenger of Allah, he said, Man ghada ila al-masjid, whoever went out and set out to the mosque, la yuridu illa an yata'allama khayran aw yu'allimahu. He did not go out to the mosque except that he wanted to learn something, to learn goodness, or that he wanted to teach it. كَانَ لَهُ كَأَجْرِ, he will have as if the reward حَاجٍ تَامًا حَجَّتُهُ. He will have the reward of a complete, of a hajj, of a pilgrim who is making hajj, who has completed his hajj, his pilgrimage. And this hadith is sahih. Allahu Akbar. A person who comes to the masjid, he does not want anything except to acquire ilm. He wants basira in his religion. He wants fiqh in his religion. He wants to know what is obligatory upon him. He wants to know the belief, how to believe in his Lord. This is what he's come for. And he's come for that, or he's come to teach it. Then he has this great and mighty bashara in this hadith, this glad tidings in this hadith, that he will have like the reward of someone who made pilgrimage, who completed his pilgrimage. Allahu Akbar. What a great and mighty hadith, if there was one, to inspire you to come to the mosque, to the lessons, to the regular lessons, to gain fiqh and basira in your religion. And likewise, as for the world, the Messenger of Allah said that the world, there's no goodness in the world, with the exception of certain things. Ad-dunya mal'oonatun. The world is cursed. Mal'oonun ma fiha. Whatever is in the earth is cursed. Illa dhikrullah. Except the remembrance of Allah. وَمَا وَالَاهُ أَوْ عَالِمًا أَوْ مُتَعَلِّمًا. So he made an exception for the dhikr of Allah, and an alim and a muta'allim. The scholar and the one who seeks knowledge, the one who learns knowledge. So all of this is the introduction to the book, speaking about the virtues and the excellence of treading out a path in pursuit of ilm. Now we come to a number of issues, which is, what are the ways and means by which we acquire this ilm? What are the ways and means by which we pursue this knowledge? What are the practical elements and the practical steps by which we pursue this knowledge? Then, from the most important of them, first of all, we'll begin with two things. First of all is al-ikhlas, which is sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal. That you are sincere, that when you seek this ilm, it is done in order to please Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a condition in every single action. And we are informed of this in many ahadith. We'll mention, first of them, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are judged by the intentions behind them. And we are reminded of the hadith of those men who will be judged first on the Day of Judgment. There will be amongst them a man who acquired knowledge. He taught the knowledge. He read the Quran. He will be brought in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, and all of the favors of Allah will be recounted to him. He will acknowledge those favors. Then it will be said to him, what have you done in return for these favors? And he will say, I learned knowledge. I taught knowledge. I read the Quran for your sake. And it will be said, kadhabt. You have lied. Indeed, you learned knowledge, that it might be said, what an alim. You read the Quran, that it might be said, huwa qari'un, what a reciter, he's a reciter. And this was then said. Then it will be commanded with respect to him, and it will be thrown on his face until he is thrown into the hellfire. And so this is from the greatest of trials, in that a person, when he goes and seeks knowledge, he has worldly reasons in his mind. He has worldly pursuits in mind. He wants it to be said that he's an alim, he's a reciter, he's an ustadh. All of these are titles of the world. And this is from the greatest of trials. The Messenger of Allah, he warned against this. He said, "Man ta'allama ilman mimma yubtagha bihi wajhullah la yata'allamuhu illa liyusiba bihi ardan min ad-dunya lam yajid arf al-jannati yawm al-qiyamah." Whoever acquired knowledge which should be sought for the sake of Allah, but he did not acquire this knowledge except to gain something from the world, he will not smell the fragrance of paradise on the Day of Judgment. So therefore, the person who learnt this ilm for a reason of the world, then he will not smell the fragrance of paradise. Likewise, a person may seek knowledge because he wants to argue, he wants to debate, he wants to contest with the scholars, he He wants to amaze the ignorant people. And this has also been warned against by the Messenger of Allah. Man talaba al-ilm liyujariya bihi al-ulama aw liyumariya bihi as-sufaha aw yasrifa bihi wujuha an-nas ilayh adkhalahu Allahu an-nar. Whoever sought knowledge in order to contest with the scholars, or to dispute and stupefy the foolish people, or to turn the faces of the people towards him, he will be entered into the fire by Allah. So all of this is a severe warning against seeking knowledge for the wrong reasons. And the second thing, this is the first thing, ikhlas is the beginning point of seeking knowledge. It is for the sake of Allah. It is to remove ignorance from yourself. It is to remove ignorance from your family. And with the intention of conveying this ilm to others and to benefit them. And to benefit you in the hereafter. This is the reason. And to please Allah. So this is the first obstacle in front of a person seeking ilm. Then the second affair by which a person can protect himself on the path to knowledge is to act upon what he knows. To act upon what he is seeking of ilm. A warning has been made in the Sunnah about knowledge which is not acted upon. And from them is that on Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, the Messenger of Rasul was brought to a people whose lips were being cut by sheaves of fire. And it was said, who are those, O Jibreel? Or he said, who are those, O Jibreel? He said, هَؤُلَاءِ خُطَبَاءُ أُمَّتِكَ. These are the sermon givers from your nation, who say that which they do not do, and who read the book of Allah, and they do not act upon what is in it. And likewise in another hadith, the 2 feet of the son of Adam will not move on the day of judgment until he's asked about his life, how he spent his life, his knowledge, what did he act upon, from his wealth, where did he acquire it, and how did he spend it, and his body, how did he waste and spend his body, what did he do with his body. So from the affairs mentioned here is the issue of knowledge and acting upon this knowledge. So these 2 things are from the starting points of seeking ilm. The first is ikhlas, sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal. The second is that to consolidate this knowledge is to act upon this knowledge. This is from the greatest means of protecting this knowledge, because knowledge is like an animal. If you don't tie this knowledge like a camel, you have a camel, and you don't tie this camel, the camel will disappear and walk away. This is likewise with knowledge. So what is it? How do you tie the knowledge down? It is by acting upon it. So the rope which ties the camel, then the action is the rope which ties down the knowledge and keeps it with you. So amal, after action, it is something that ties knowledge to you. Look at the example of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. They used to not proceed with more than 10 verses at a time. They would take 10 verses of the Quran. Then they would learn the meanings of those verses. Then they would look at what action was demanded and required by those verses. Then they would act upon those verses. And so they would say, فَتَعَلَّمْنَا الْعِلْمَ وَالْعَمَلَ جَمِيعًا. So basically we learned the knowledge and the action at the one and the same time together. This is how the Sahaba would acquire knowledge. They would acquire knowledge and consolidate it and tie it down with ilm. And so they took 10 verses at a time, and they never just memorized the entire Quran without any understanding, without any fiqh, without any basira. No, they took 10 verses at a time, learned them, memorized them, then studied them, understood the meanings, took out the rulings, looked at what action was demanded from them. Then they acted upon all of that. And all of this kept the ilm with them. It kept the ilm with them. And so this now leads us to the third from the ways and means of seeking ilm, and it is the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. Of Allah Azza wa Jal. To fear Allah Azza wa Jal. As we see the wasiyah of Allah in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ وَصَّيْنَا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَنِ اتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. That indeed we have made as a legacy or teaching or advice to those who were given the book before you, and you likewise that you have the taqwa of Allah. This is something that was given to the prophets, to all of mankind, to the believers, and to everyone. It is to have the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. What is the meaning of the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal? There are many different definitions. It is to work obedience to Allah, upon a light from Allah, upon knowledge from Allah, whilst hoping in the reward from Allah. It is to abandon disobedience to Allah, upon a light from Allah, meaning upon knowledge, fearing the punishment of Allah. This is one definition from Talq bin Habib. Another definition of taqwa is that you know that, or that Allah should see you in those things in which He has commanded you, and that He does not see you in those things in which He has prohibited you. This is another explanation of what it means, taqwa, that Allah sees you only in those things which He's commanded you, and He does not see you in those things in which He has prohibited you. Likewise, from the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal is to abandon sins, and like we see in the poetry, خَلِّ الذُّنُوبَ صَغِيرَهَا وَكَبِيرَهَا فَهُوَ التُّقَى وَاصْنَعْ كَمَاشٍ فَوْقَ أَرْضِ الشَّوْكِ يَحْذَرُ مَا يَرَى. The taqwa is like the example of a man who is proceeding upon some earth in which there are thorns. So he proceeds with care and caution. He lifts his garment and he sees where he is stepping. This is the definition and the meaning of taqwa. Likewise, from the definitions of taqwa is to put between yourself and between the punishment of Allah a barrier. To erect a barrier between yourself and between the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. And what is this barrier? It is to do what He commanded and to keep away from what He prohibited. All of these are definitions of taqwa given by the scholars from the Salaf and other than them. And there is no doubt that the taqwa of Allah, whoever has this taqwa, he will be taught by Allah Azza wa Jal. This is stated in the Quran as He says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهِ. If you want to be taught by Allah, then have the taqwa of Allah. Allah will increase you in ilm and fahm and huda and basira by having the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. Fourthly, from the ways and means, so now we've established ikhlas and acting, al-amal bil-ilm. Thirdly, we said the taqwa of Allah Azza wa Jal. And fourthly is that a person has clear objectives. He has a clear objective and he has clear steps which are going to take him to that objective. Now this is very, very important. The Shaykh says that if you are going out to pursue knowledge, your objective should be very clear. He says often you see many students of knowledge, you ask them, what do you want from this knowledge? He will say, well, I don't know, I just want the reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. I'm seeking knowledge because I want the reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. But he doesn't know what is his goal. He doesn't know the ghaya, nor does he know the tariqah. The ghaya is, what is my objective? What am I seeking at the end of this? And the tariqah is, what is the way that I'm using to arrive at this? Now what does this mean? What is the Shaykh pointing to? He's pointing to the fact that many people fall into the trap that when he sets out on the path to knowledge, he's neither here nor there. He doesn't really have a goal in his mind. Okay, what do I want to achieve by the end of this month? Or what do I want to achieve by the end of this Ramadan or the end of this year? What do I want to achieve? Right? So he doesn't have an objective, number one. If he doesn't have an objective, then clearly he's not going to have a clear tariqah, a clear path towards that objective. So he will be taking a bit of this, taking a bit of that, taking a bit of this, taking a bit of that, and it's like the birds on a tree. The birds, they come and sit on a tree and then they all disappear from the tree. They disappear. Right? So he's not really acquired anything. So what is meant here is that you need to have a clear plan. For example, you say to yourself, within 3 months, I want to thoroughly understand the book Al-Qawaid Al-Arba' within 4 months. I want to memorize this book, first of all. Then I want to understand every point of benefit that I can find in the explanations of this book. For example, the books written by Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami, Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabri, Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, I want to extract every single benefit. Now we have a ghaya. Now we have an objective. Now you have something clear in your mind that you're going to work towards. Next, the tariqah itself becomes it just opens itself to you. So the first stage is, you memorize the text bit by bit. Then secondly, you acquire the explanations, or if there are durus which are taking place, you go to them, or you acquire the explanations. You study them. Any things which are difficult for you to understand, you take them to an alim. If you can't get to an alim, ask a talibu ilmin. All of this now becomes very apparent to you. So you have a ghaya and you have a tariqah. Right? And then these goals and objectives, you are now very clear. If someone says to you, what are you pursuing? What is your goal? You can now say, my goal is, I want to understand the book for the 4 principles. I want to understand the various points of benefit given by the scholars. I want to be clear and understand. Now you can clearly explain what is your ghaya. And the same then goes into other fields, other areas in the issues of fiqh. I want to understand the topic of purification. Now let me study this, and I will spend 3 months on this. Right? So one of the biggest obstacles in seeking knowledge is that a person does not have a clear goal in front of him. He's wandering in every direction. He doesn't have any focus. Right? So this is from the greatest of the ways in acquiring knowledge and being firm in that knowledge. Have a ghaya, have a clear objective, pursue that objective with the ways and means, stick to them until you reach your objective. Once you've done that, then move into other things. Now this doesn't mean that you can't do 2 or 3 objectives at the same time, no. But as long as you have clear objectives in place and the tariqah, then this is the route to seeking knowledge. So this is the 4th, that you must have a clear objective and you must have the ways and the paths and lay down the clear path towards fulfilling that objective. The next thing is that of seeking knowledge, the 5th thing is that a person must have the knowledge of how to acquire the sciences. How would you acquire the sciences? You must have the ways and means. To give an example, a person might want to travel upon a journey. He comes to the sea and he wants to go on a journey, but he doesn't know how to swim. So how are you going to proceed in the journey? You don't know how to swim. How are you going to proceed? Likewise here, that you must have knowledge of how to proceed in the path of knowledge. Now, what is the actual means and the mechanism that you proceed, like you proceed on a journey? How do you proceed on the path to knowledge? So from those affairs that we should understand whilst we proceed upon knowledge, and from the ways and means as to how to acquire knowledge, is that we understand that we begin with the small issues before we begin with the great and mighty issues. This makes sense. And the example is given of a chick which leaves the egg. If it tries to fly at the very beginning, it's going to fall and break its neck. So the chick begins in small steps, step by step, until it becomes strong and its wings become strong. Then it flies a little bit under the supervision of its parents. And then it gets used to that. Then eventually it flies a bit more. Then eventually it gets stronger and stronger until it can fly all the way with its parents. This is how a chick develops in knowledge. And so, in terms of flying. And likewise with ilm, you begin with the small issues before you move to the large issues. Now, how is this practically shown? Practically, for example, the books which are written, they are in different categories. There are the small, concise books in a field of knowledge. In Aqidah, for example, in Allah's names and attributes, for example. Then there are intermediate books. Then there are the detailed, elaborate books. So you always begin with the first small books first. The simple, concise issues. Then you move to the more detailed explanations or books. Then you go to the more elaborate books. This is how you proceed in every single category of knowledge. So for example, you say, what are the most basic books on the topic of Tawheed? Al-Usul, Thalathatul Usul, Al-Qawaid Al-Arba, Kashf Al-Shubahat. So you begin with the simple texts and proceed upon them. What are the simplest, most basic texts in Aqidah? Then you look at Sharh Al-Sunnah, Usul Al-Sunnah, Aqidah Al-Wasitiyya, Lum'atul I'tiqad. Then you move to the more detailed ones. And the same with in every topic, in fiqh, in tafsir, and so on and so forth. In seerah, you always go to what is the book that is the simplest, most basic book that the scholars are always concerned with, and they give simple explanations with. So this is from knowing the ways and means to how to acquire knowledge. You don't jump into the complex, detailed books that deal with all of the issues of khilaf and so on and so forth, because you will become confused. Rather, you start with the foundations, with the simplest text, and move step by step. And so this is the way to acquiring ilm. The way to acquiring ilm. It is done in a certain way, in a certain procedure. That's the fifth point. The sixth point is that a person should have the greatest of attachment and concern with the books of the Salaf. The books written by the Imams of the Salaf. That's where his focus should be. And there's no doubt that the books that were written by the Salaf are filled with all goodness, and that the latter part of this ummah will not be rectified except what rectified the earlier part of this ummah. And so, therefore, when we look in the books of the Salaf, the books that are written in the topics of Aqidah, topics of Manhaj, topics of Fiqh, topics of, and the books which are recommended by the scholars, then we flock around them and we give them the greatest attention. So this is point number 6. Point number 7 is that and this is also vital, this point as well, that a person actually uses his mind in terms of understanding and memorizing. Now pay attention to this, because this is very, very important. Shaykh says that many students of knowledge have lost, especially in our time today, they have lost this practicality of actually using their mind at the time of acquiring knowledge. And what they've done, now you're going to find this, he says what they've done is that now they start relying upon papers. And they attend many lessons, but they benefit very little. Why? Because when a person comes to a lesson, what is he doing? Is he occupying his mind with what the speaker is saying? Is he thinking and reflecting what is the speaker saying? And taking mental notes and grasping and thinking about it? Or is he spending his time just writing notes? Now, I don't want you to misunderstand this issue, because writing notes obviously is part and parcel of learning. So let's not misunderstand what the Shaykh is saying. But what he's saying here is a tendency whereby, and you will know from your own experience, that sometimes your intent is to just simply write down every word that the speaker is saying. So what's going through your mind is not grasping what he is saying and understanding what he is saying, but your concern is, let me write every single letter and word so I can get down what he said. Right? So your mind now is occupied with the actual words, and you're not grasping what he's saying. You're not thinking and reflecting about what he's saying. And so the end of the lesson will go, and you've got a whole bunch of notes, but you've not really grasped much of what he said. And then you think to yourself, yes, well, I've got the notes now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to revise them, and then I'll understand what the lesson was about. Then you go home and you put the book away, and then a week passes by, 2 weeks pass by, 3 weeks pass by, and you haven't gone back to that knowledge. This is routine. We know we experience these things. If we are true to ourselves, we know that this is something that happens. So the Shaykh is saying that this is not how the Salaf used to be. And the Salaf used to use their mind both for memorization and in terms of understanding at the point of acquiring knowledge. Now the Shaykh mentions an amazing story here from Abu Isa at-Tirmidhi. Now this is a comparison between the minds of that time and the minds of this time. And we have to try and understand, why is there the difference? Why is the difference between the minds of the Sahaba and the scholars of Hadith and our minds today? What are the reasons why there's a great difference? So here Imam Abu Iyaad Tirmidhi, it is mentioned about him that he actually wrote from a sheikh 2 volumes of Hadith. And then he happened to meet him on a journey. He met the sheikh from whom he wrote 2 volumes of Hadith. He happened to meet him on a journey. So he said to the sheikh, he said, "Oh sheikh, can you read to me those Hadith that you narrated to me, the 2 volumes of Hadith?" And he had with him what appeared to be 2 volumes. At-Tirmidhi this is. Right? So he's saying to a sheikh, "Read to me the Hadith which you read to me before." And with him were some papers, were some volumes. And so his sheikh thought that he has with him 2 written volumes, but the volumes were empty, there was nothing in the volumes. Blank paper. Right? So he requests from his sheikh to read back to him. So the sheikh began to read all the hadith, like 2 volumes worth of hadith, to read him back to him. And when the sheikh finished, he then looked at these papers that are with At-Tirmidhi, and he finds that they are just blank. There's nothing in these papers. So he was thinking all along that he's going to test to see, but there's nothing in the papers. So now he says to At-Tirmidhi, "Are you not ashamed? You are asking me to recite to you, making me think that you have 2 volumes with you, and there's nothing with you at all?" So At-Tirmidhi said, so I then told him my story. I said, "Actually, I've memorized them all. I memorized everything that you said the first time round." And so he said, "Okay, then read them to me then." So At-Tirmidhi began to read all of the hadith, read every single hadith one by one. Remember, 2 volumes of hadiths. Every single hadith with the isnad, one by one. And he did not make a mistake in a single letter. Not a single letter. So the sheikh said to him, "Well, actually, you knew you were going to meet me, so you just memorized them before you came." And so the sheikh said, "You just wanted to show me that you were a hafiz. So you memorized them before you came, and obviously it's easy for you." So At-Tirmidhi said, "Okay, read to me some other hadith besides them." So the sheikh then began to recite 40 hadiths with the isnad. So immediately afterwards, after hearing those 40 hadith, At-Tirmidhi recited back to him the 40 hadith without making a mistake in a single letter. And this, amazed him that he heard them in the same sitting and repeated them in the same sitting exactly as he heard them without making a single mistake. Then we have the example of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. When you read Majmu' al-Fatawa, and he's asked a question, so he says, "Su'ila Shaykh al-Islam," and then you start reading the answer, and the answer goes for 10 pages, then it goes for 20 pages, then it goes for 30 pages. And as you're reading, you see, first of all, he's bringing ayat from the Quran, a hadith from the Sunnah, statements of the Salaf verbatim, and you're thinking, the Shaykh actually, he must have sat and he must have authored this, and thought about this, and authored this answer. But the reality is that he was writing the answer while the person is sat there in front of him, and writing it all down. And then at the end of it, he writes, "Well, this is what we can say in brief. And if we were to expand in detail, it would require some further elaboration, but this is what we write in brief." And he's written 30, 40, 50 pages, 60 pages, 70 pages, all from the top of his head. Ayat from the Quran, a hadith from the Sunnah, statements of the Salaf, verbatim. He's quoting from books verbatim, and he's actually right to the letter. So you can see, how is it that these scholars are able to recall knowledge? What is it that they are doing? They are using their minds. They are using their minds, that they are able at the time of acquisition to understand that knowledge and to put that knowledge in their mind somehow, so it stays in there. Now obviously, the minds of that time, look, our minds, what do we have? We have so many distractions, preoccupations, we have devices in our hands, we are staring at computers, we are all over the place, right? Our minds cannot be the same as the minds of those people. And this is why we should be very, very aware of the effect of modern technology, modern devices, modern lifestyles upon the ability of a man to concentrate. Do you know that once Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he sat in the house of Imam Ahmad on a night, and while sitting there, he extracted 1,000 points of benefit from a single hadith. I don't recall the hadith now, but he extracted, just by sitting and reflecting, 1,000 points of benefit from a single hadith. That shows the ability to concentrate and to keep the mind focused upon something. Nowadays, you sit for 5 minutes. Now this is the YouTube generation and the social media generation, producing people who can't maintain their concentration upon something for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You read something, and by the time you've got to the middle of the page, that's it. You can't keep the concentration. This is the danger of technology. And so my advice to you would be that be careful of this danger, because it will impact you, it will impact your children in a very negative way. This is the danger of technology. There are two sides to technology. There is a beneficial aspect, no doubt. We don't deny there's a beneficial aspect. Rapid communication, check on your family, keep in touch when you're traveling. These are practical things which you can use technology for. Likewise, that you can download lectures and whatever else. But there's also another side where you are deceived into thinking that you are doing something of benefit, which appears to be beneficial, but in the long term it's not benefiting you at all. You're sitting there just all day, just retweeting this, retweeting that, doing this, doing that, social media, WhatsApping this, whatever, little benefits. To be honest, you don't remember benefits through devices. You remember benefits when you sit at a book, you have a pen, you read, you make notes, you rewrite them. This is what sticks in your mind. This is proven scientifically as well. They tell you that when you read something, for example, on Kindle or a device or an iPad, and you're reading, that reading is not the same as reading a physical book. This is scientifically proven, that you will not retain the same as when you read an actual book. And this we know from experience as well. A person can experience this as well. So do not be deceived by the lure of technology. Stick to the standard traditional means of acquiring knowledge. Use your mind, implement your mind. Right? This is something that we have lost because of the circumstances of our lives and technology and so on and so forth. And you don't find this. You find people who are gifted naturally. They are gifted and they develop an amazing memory, whatever else. These are very, very rare. But in those days, it was normal amongst the people of hadith to be able to memorize a hadith and to repeat something immediately after they've heard it. Now this ability is lost. This is how knowledge used to be taught. Right? So the seventh point here then is to use your mind. Try to learn to be more active in terms of what are you listening to, what is the meaning that's being conveyed to you. You can use notes, no doubt, as an aid, no doubt, but don't be engrossed in the writing at the expense of grasping what is being said. Right? And the Shaykh actually gives an example here as well of how you teach a child. You tell him, to repeat Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Then you come back to him the second day, then you tell him the second verse, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and you do things in step by step, and you make him use his mind. And your mind will always become accustomed to how it is trained. So if you're just lazy and you never train your mind will always remain lazy. But if you use your mind and you try to make it memorize something every day, you try to make it reflect and think upon what it is listening to, then your mind over time will become accustomed to that. All of this, however you train your mind, this is what it will become. So the point that is made here is to use your mind, make it active, make it engrossed and involved in what is being said, in the meaning of what is being said. Don't just turn it off and make it engage in something else. Right? So this is an essential part of ilm. Point number 8, which is a great and mighty point and motivation in learning how the Salaf used to acquire knowledge. Go and read the biographies of the Salaf. Go and read Al-Dhahabi's Siyar, his biographies of the Salaf. You will see some amazing, mighty affairs in these books. Let's give some examples. The Shaykh gives some examples. Shu'bah rahimahullah ta'ala, he travelled a whole month just to hear one hadith. He already had the hadith through one narration, through one route, but he wanted to hear it from another route. So he travelled 1 month just to hear a single hadith. Jabir bin Abdullah, radiallahu anhu, the companion, he bought a riding mule, an animal. He went all the way to Sham, all the way to Syria, in order to, a whole month, in order to listen to a single hadith through another companion, because he had not heard it himself directly from the Messenger of Allah. Imam Ahmad, as a young child, he would leave his house at night time in order to reach the circles of knowledge. And his mother would take his thawb and say to him, until Fajr. And he would go out, he would travel to Abd Razak in Yemen without having anything, any possessions, and he would hire himself to the caravans that I'll work for you if I can come with you to travel to Yemen, to seek knowledge, to seek ilm, as a young youth. So when you start reading the biographies of the Salaf, you will become amazed at what you read about the lengths that they want to seek knowledge. Take this example of Abu Hatim Ar-Razi, rahimahullah ta'ala, an imam from the students of Imam Ahmad, Abu Hatim Ar-Razi. He said, the first time that I left for seeking knowledge, I left for 7 years. I went for 7 years. I measured every single step that I walked on my 2 feet. And I measured them to be 1,000 farsakh. 1,000 farsakh. Farsakh is an old Persian unit of measuring distance. It is equal to around 5,100 meters, 5.1 kilometers. It is equal to just over 3 miles. So he measured 1,000. Now think about this. Not only is he going out seeking knowledge, he's computing in his head, because you would know by measuring how many steps of yours would equal a farsakh. Right? So not only is he going out seeking knowledge, he's computing in his head, remembering every step that he took and determining a farsakh, which would be however many thousands of steps. And then he worked out and determined that he'd made 1,000 of those in that 7 years of seeking knowledge. That means 3,000 miles walking on his 2 feet in the pursuit of knowledge. 3,000 walking. Forget what you may do in a car, traveling up and down the country, going to this conference or that conference, and to, 100 miles in the car, which takes you an hour. He went walking. And then Abu Hatim, he says, then I went to Bahrain. From Bahrain, I went to Egypt. Mashiyan, walking. So Bahrain is on this side in the Persian Gulf, and he went walking to the to Misr, which is on the other side of the Red Sea, walking. Then from there he went to Ramla in Palestine, walking. From Palestine here he went to Dimashq, Syria, walking. Then he went north to Antioch, which is further towards Turkey, walking. Then he went to Tartus, walking. Then he came back down to Hims, which is again in Syria, walking. Then he went back across to Ramla in Palestine, walking. Then he rode to Iraq. Then he rode on a beast all the way to Iraq. All of this was on my first journey, and I was a person of 20 years of age. A young man of 20 years of age, and he's walked 3,000 miles in pursuit of knowledge. Think about that. And then Abu Hatim. And then there are other stories as well, and because of, we want to conclude the lesson as well, there are many other things that we don't want to miss out. And likewise we see his son, Abdurrahman, who is his son, he says, when we read his story as well, amazing, he was from the most severe of people of taking knowledge from his father. He would read to his father as he was going to the mosque. He would read to his father on a journey. He would read to his father in entering the house. He would read to his father whilst he was relieving himself. So he'd read to him whilst his father was relieving himself. He would read to his father when his father was sitting and drinking some water. He never left any opportunity to read knowledge, or meaning to acquire knowledge from his father. And he also says that we were in Egypt for 7 months. Not once in that 7 months did we eat cooked food, on the pursuit to knowledge. And so all of this are examples of the great lengths that the Salaf went to in order to seek knowledge, and there is much more that can be said, but for the shortage of time, this is point number 8. Read the biographies of the Salaf to see how they sought knowledge, and you will see the most amazing affairs that will inspire you in your pursuit to knowledge. Point number 9 is not to be engaged in the excess things of the worldly life. There are many things of the world that are just excesses. You do not need them. They waste your time. And do not waste your time in the excesses of the worldly life. Sitting around, conversations, chats, meetings. All of these things are excessive things that you do not need in your life. You see many people, when it comes to seeking knowledge in the masjid, after 20 minutes while the speaker is speaking, he'll start dozing off. Yet when he goes and he's sitting and we are speaking about joking and laughing and the football and this and whatever else, and now he's alive and he's now paying attention. Right? This is the fact, this is the reality. You see many people, you sit with them for an hour, 2 hours, all they want to talk about is their job and this and what happened in their job and what's happening in this and whatever else. Or what's happening to his business and what he is going to pursue next. Or he'll talk about is this. There's no other concern. So do not be engrossed in the, that which is the fudul, the excesses, the unnecessary things in life. Don't be engrossed upon them, because this takes you away from ilm. It rots your brain. Keep focused upon ilm. So I'm going to quickly summarize the next 3 points because we are short of time. But this is point number 9. Do not engross yourself in things which are from the excesses of the world. So point number 9 was that the Salaf never used to occupy themselves, engage themselves in the fudul, the excess things of life. They were not like this, because this takes a person away from ilm. And if they were to engage in affairs, they are affairs such as, for example, keeping the ties of kinship, keeping the family ties. This is something desired in the Sharia. Or if there was a need that they had, an occupation, a pursuit, these are genuine needs that people need for their life to, for life and welfare and so on and so forth. These are things which we need. But beyond that, there are fudul, there are excess things which come in between you and the pursuit of knowledge, and the Salaf never used to engage in these types of affairs. So this is point number 9. Be careful with your time. Engage in activities and things which are useful and fruitful. Do not waste your time. Number 10 from the ways of seeking ilm is that you choose for yourself righteous company. Have the right type of company who have lofty goals and lofty concerns. Choose a man, choose a person who this is a man who has lofty ambitions. He has lofty concerns. He has goals in his life in terms of ilm and whatever else. Don't choose a companion, as we said, who his concern is just to speak about the football and his business and whatever else and the worldly affairs and the things which are happening in his family and all of this, and that's all he occupies his time with. Whenever you meet him, this is all you're going to hear from him. Don't choose the likes of this person. Choose the likes of this person who's going to come to you and say, Akhi, have you heard of this benefit from this sheikh in such and such book? Who's going to raise questions which are of benefit, and who's going to make your mind stimulate, who's going to stimulate your mind and make you want to pursue other things and find things and research things and analyze things and share things that he's learnt with you. This is the type of person you want in his company. Not the person who's going to just, tell you about his dunya or whatever else and just waste hours and hours of your time, because your time is precious. So the righteous company, it has an effect upon you. There are so many people who had zeal for knowledge, then they met the wrong companion, and then their zeal for knowledge just went and destroyed because they got occupied in the worldly affairs. And this we know from the hadith, مثل الجليس الصالح والجليس السوء كحامل المسك ونافخ القير. The famous hadith, well-known hadith. That the example of righteous company and the evil company is like the seller of musk and the blacksmith. The seller of musk, even if you don't, either he will give you something for free, or you will buy from him, or you will just smell the nice fragrance from him. But as for the blacksmith, then either he will burn your thobe, or you will find from him a repulsive smell. The type of company you keep will affect you, no doubt. No doubt. Doesn't matter how strong you believe you are, company will affect you. So, choosing the righteous company, a person who is like you, who has lofty ambitions in terms of ilm, lofty concerns, then this is a type of person that you should be keeping company with. Point number 11 is that you should acquire all of the ways and means which are available to you to acquire knowledge. And so the first and the most greatest of them is to attend the circles of ilm, to sit in the gatherings of ilm, the gatherings of the scholars if you are able. If you cannot travel to the scholars, if you travel to the scholars, if you're not able to, then go to the masajid. The masajid in which the students of knowledge, they teach the various books and whatever. So the foundation is that you come to the actual circles of knowledge. You make a physical presence in the masajid like we are doing here. This is the asl of seeking ilm. All knowledge is sought in this way. This is the asl. However, from the bounties and favors of Allah Azza wa Jal is that through technology and so on and so forth, we were able to record the statements of the scholars on cassettes and so on and so forth and CDs. Now we're able to download from the internet. As I said, there are certainly benefits to technology, but a person has to use technology very, very carefully so as not to fall into the pitfalls that we mentioned earlier on. That there are some practical beneficial uses to technology. So he can then make use of. So the asl is he comes to the circles of knowledge physically. And then on top of that, he can augment and add to that as a supplement, not as a replacement. He can then find durus which are recorded, and he can use them alongside the asl, which is to attend the gatherings in the masajid, right? So basically you can make use of all of the means which are available to you by way of the web, by way of the cassettes, by way of the CDs. All of this is an aid and a support, no doubt, it is useful. So a person uses that alongside the things that we mentioned previously. So this is point number 11. And point number 12, that we'll finish with, inshallah ta'ala, is that from the affairs that aid you in seeking knowledge is that when you take a book, make an index of the book. Make an index of every benefit that you've acquired from the book. So for example, you take a book like this or any other book and you read from beginning to end, and as you're reading from beginning to end, you say, okay, page 1, so you might find a benefit in that page. So you write an index. So you have a book, you have a notebook, and in this notebook you are making indexes of books that you've read. So in this notebook that you have, you write, for example, the book, Al-Ilmu Wasailuhu wa Thimaruhu. When you write the author, you write who published the book. So you say, for example, this book that I have is published by Darul Mirath al-Nabawi. The edition is 2015. You say the book is of 60-something pages with the index. Then you start page 1. You read through it and you see, okay, what benefit have I found in here which I do not otherwise know? So you write benefit, and you summarize the benefit. You don't have to copy, you just summarize the benefit. Page 2, what benefit do I have? The page 3, page 4, page 5. And so anything that you found to be of benefit, you make an index of it in a notebook. So now you have an index of the entire book, and you can revise by going through the index, and you pick out all the benefits, and also for reference where you need to go back to look at the original issue. So this is from the ways and means that allow you to acquire knowledge and to make that knowledge firm. Right? You make indexes of what you are learning and what you are acquiring. So this is why when you look at, this is what the scholars do. If you look at the scholars, like for example, Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan has a 2-volume book in which he extracted all the benefits from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah from his Majmu' al-Fatawa, just summarizing the benefit, or from the various works of Ibn Taymiyyah. And so the practice is that he himself is learning and acquiring all of those, whatever is of benefit in those things. Likewise, Imam al-Sa'di. When you look at Imam al-Sa'di, he has a book in which he went systematically through the writings of Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim and just summarized all of the benefits. Right? So basically he's making like an index for himself and just indicating where this benefit was found. So likewise, this is from the ways and means how you can retain that knowledge, like make indexes of books that you are going through. So this was point number 12, and in about 5 minutes, so let me just quickly finish the second part of this book, where the Shaykh then goes on to mention some of the fruits of knowledge, the thimar of ilm, because we said that the title is Al-Ilmu Wasailuhu wa Thimaruhu. So we've been through the ways and means, 12 ways and means. Now there are thimar, there are fruits to this ilm. So very quickly we'll mention them to conclude. From the fruits of this ilm, if you take these 12 steps, is that all goodness will come to you. Every goodness in this life and the hereafter, it will come to you if you pursue this ilm in the way that we described. And so Ibn al-Qayyim says that every attribute which Allah praised a servant for in the Quran, that attribute is always from the fruits of knowledge, is from the result of knowledge. And every attribute that Allah has criticized in the Quran, that attribute is from the fruits of ignorance. Right? So when you look at whatever Allah has praised and criticized in the Quran, all those attributes praised, they result from knowledge. And all those attributes criticized, they result from ignorance. So from the fruits of ilm is every goodness will come to you. Secondly, your aqeedah will be sound. By proceeding upon ilm, your belief will be corrected. And especially when he reads the books of the Salaf, then his aqeedah will be sound and will be correct. Thirdly, his actions will be upon rectification. His actions will be sound. His actions will be correct. His actions will be rectified. When he learns, his action will be corrected. And from the conditions of action is that he follows the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, when a person pursues knowledge, he knows his action will be sound and will be acceptable to Allah Azza wa Jal. And so there will be salah, there will be rectitude in his actions. Fourthly, his da'wah in turn will be correct. Because you've acquired ilm, then you will call others to that ilm upon basira. So your da'wah will be correct on account of knowledge. This is what we've been commanded. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. Say, this is my path, I call to Allah upon basira, upon insight, meaning upon knowledge. I and whoever follows me. So by pursuing ilm and removing ignorance from yourself, then when you call your family to Allah Azza wa Jal, when you call your society to Allah Azza wa Jal, you will be calling upon basira, upon ilm, upon insight. Likewise, from the fruits of knowledge is husnul khuluq, is to have good manners. Knowledge will lead you to good manners. And good manners, as you know, are very weighty and heavy on the scales. There are many ahadith which speak of the weightiness of husnul khuluq with Allah Azza wa Jal. And so from the fruits of ilm, when a person acquires ilm and acts upon this ilm, he will see a change in his behavior. He will be righteous towards his parents. He will be righteous towards his family. He will be righteous towards his Muslim brothers and sisters. His ta'amul with the people will be, in a certain way. All of these changes will be seen in his behavior, in his character. This is from the fruits of ilm. And if he does not see these changes, it means there is a flaw in his seeking ilm. It is not sincere. There's something wrong if these changes are not found in a person, there's something clearly wrong, if those effects are not seen. Sixthly, from the fruits of seeking knowledge is that a person is constantly receiving reward. As we said, when a person sets out and leaves his house to seek knowledge, he's on a path to paradise. He's involved in an act of worship for every moment he leaves his house seeking knowledge. So he's acquiring a huge amount of thawab, reward, by pursuing knowledge. Seventhly, from the benefits of ilm is just the general benefit that comes from knowledge. The more knowledge that is found with individuals, the wider and the greater the benefit expands into the society. This is the seventh benefit. The eighth benefit that the Shaykh mentions is that the reward for this person continues in this life and the hereafter. As we see in the hadith, مَنْ عَلَّمَ إِلْمًا فَلَهُ أَجْرُ مَنْ عَمِلَ بِهِ لَا يَنْقُصُ مِنْ أَجْرِ الْعَامِلِ شَيْءٍ. Whoever taught knowledge, he will continue to have the reward of the one who acted upon it. Nothing will be removed from the reward of the one who acts upon it at all. And likewise the hadith, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانُ انْقَطَعَ عَنْهُ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. When a man dies, all his actions cease except for three. إِلَّا مِنْ صَدَقَةٍ جَارِيَةٍ, recurring charity, أَوْ عِلْمٍ يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ, or knowledge by which the people continue to benefit. This will continue to accrue to him. أَوْ وَلَدٍ صَالِحٍ يَدْعُو لَهُ, or a righteous son who continues to make supplication for him. All of these are from the great and mighty fruits that come from knowledge itself. And with that we conclude our lesson there. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us tawfiq in benefiting from what we have learned today. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept this from us. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.